What is up, ladies and gents? You know what time of day it is. It's XCN time, and in today's video we're going to be talking all about XCN. We're going to be discussing what we are seeing here on the charts, and I'll be giving you guys my price prediction for XCN over the coming days and weeks, as well as my targets for 2025. So be sure to stay tuned for all of that. Of course, if you are a new viewer, then welcome to this channel. If you do like this sort of content, hit the like button and subscribe for more. If you are a returning viewer, as always, welcome back to the channel. It's great to have you all here. So we're going to be diving straight into this video. We're going to start off with the shorter term here on XCN. And of course, we are on the 1 hour chart right now. Now, it's no surprise to us that the prices of a lot of cryptos on top of XCN have been heading in the downwards direction. Here you can see the trend of XCN has just been heading down now for basically the past few weeks since this little pump that we've had. Of course, what we've been watching here on this channel has actually been something that looks a little bit like this. Now, of course, what we have here on the screen, in my opinion, are two trend lines, both facing in the downwards directions on the very short term. So of course, as you can see, we have a support for the price that has been tested on multiple separate occasions. You can see, for example, prices have come down to the support level there, and there. And of course, for this upper resistance line, it's not perfect, but we generally tend to see the prices coming up roughly to this resistance line to test it as a resistance and head back down. Now, of course, the fact that these two trend lines are heading in the downwards directions and they are converging into each other, which means that if we extend them out, we eventually expect them to meet. That means that we could be seeing a potential falling wedge in the shorter term. Now, of course, if we do see this falling wedge, and that means it's very good news, because whenever we see this pattern, it is a bullish one. So if we start to see prices really breaking out to the upside from this falling wedge, we could see this as the potential price target of any breakout to the upside in the shorter term. Now, of course, that is a 15% upside, and it could take the prices as high as 0.016. So of course, if you're holding XCN for, a little bit of the longer term, this may not be the most impressive thing, but this small price target here from this falling wedge in the short term could trigger off something a lot bigger here on XCN in the longer term. Now, I'm going to talk about that in just a little while, but I first want to talk about the Trump stuff that has popped up once again. Now, of course, maybe it's been a little while since you've heard this word here, but essentially tariffs are coming back into the limelight, because if you guys remember, at the start of April, this guy announced some crazy tariffs for the whole world. And if you guys need a reminder as to what happens basically with the markets, if I just go on the USA stock market, you can see that prices took this massive plunge, but they did also recover quickly because Trump said he was going to do a 90-day pause on tariffs. Now, 90 days later is on July the 9th. So in theory, tomorrow, that 90-day pause expires, which means that countries are potentially going back to the tariff rates that this guy mentioned at the start of April. Now, it's not all bad news, because there has been a few deals. So the UK, Vietnam, for example, have made some deals with the USA. But just yesterday, we saw this announced as well. He's announced a new set of tariffs for some countries that you guys can see here. But the reaction hasn't been too bad so far. And so in a nutshell, guys, basically just watch out for a lot of volatility in the markets over the next few days as that July 9th deadline comes up. Also, another date that you guys need to watch out for, and that is the 1st of August. And that is where the deadline has been, in theory, extended to. So, of course, if there has been no deals made at the 1st of August, we could see some countries reverting to the old tariffs that Trump announced back in April, and that could be pretty bad indeed. But of course, at any point, we could get some more announcements from Trump regarding those tariffs. And of course, that could introduce some volatility into the markets. Now, one other thing that I wanted to talk about as well are these minutes that are coming out tomorrow at 7 p.m. Now, this is basically the chair of the Fed speaking about the economy, the effect of the tariffs on the economy, the inflation and everything like that. And the mood of that meeting will probably determine whether we go up or down in the markets. If it's pretty bearish, that could sink crypto quite a bit lower. However, if we do hear some positive news about the tariff inflation not being so bad, if we hear that rate cuts could be coming sooner than we think, that could be a very good sign that could be enough fuel to push XCN above this shorter term falling wedge. Now, I said to you guys that even though the price target from this short-term falling wedge wasn't so massive, if we zoom out here on the chart, let's go on the 1-day chart so you guys can see it. Then what we also have here on XCN looks something a little bit like this. This is also something we have been monitoring here on XCN. And of course, as you guys can see, we've got this strong resistance here on the XCN price. Now, you can see that it has been tested a lot of different times. We've had multiple tests throughout the history of this resistance. So we know it's a strong resistance here on XCN. We've also got the support going across like this. Again, we've seen the price come down to the support on multiple different occasions. And so at the moment, we have this triangle pattern here on XCN. And if we see that short-term falling wedge play out to the upside, we could see those prices push past this upper resistance line that you see here on the screen. And so what we have here, guys, is a triangle. Now, of course, if we see that short-term falling wedge here on XCN, then the price target from that short-term falling wedge could push prices also above this upper resistance that you see here on this triangle. Now, if that does occur, if we see a breakout from this resistance here of this triangle, then we are looking at a much bigger price target as a result of this triangle, of the distance between the first test of support to resistance. And of course, that is a 268% upside. So if we break out within the next few days, we could be looking at 0.056 here on XCN. That means we would see a new high compared to January. So of course, definitely something to be watching out for. I mean, if you have a look at this triangle that we have here on the screen, there isn't much time left before the triangle ends. So XCN really actually has to make its mind up sooner rather than later what it's going to do. And if we see a breakout to the upside, we could see a massive price target. So of course, guys, don't forget, if you want to get $10 completely free to buy some XCN, then don't forget to check out the MEXC exchange. As you can see on the screen, they're giving every new user who signs up using the link in the description down below $10 to get started. And remember, guys, this exchange does not require KYC to buy and sell crypto. So all you have to do to get that $10 is deposit some crypto or fiat currency into your new account, and then they'll give you that money straight away. So like I say, you can simply buy some XCN with it, or you can long XCN with up to 20 times leverage using MEXC futures. Of course, guys, thank you so much for supporting this channel. Back into this video. So this is one of the main patterns that I'm watching for now, and the main appeal of this is that the deadline comes on the 19th of July. So before that date, we should find out whether we see a breakout to the upside. Of course, just for the completeness of this video, if we do see prices fall down below, we see a decisive breakout. So let's say we see a sharp red candle heading down below this, then of course that could also mean we've seen a breakdown below this triangle, and that could potentially give us a price target of a breakdown of 0.0037. So that is a massive loss if we see that occur. Of course, the chances of this happening are small, but if we do see a sharp drop and a clear breakout to the downside, this could increase those odds. So just be prepared for this bearish scenario, guys, particularly if you are a shorter term holder. So of course, what I do think is going to happen over the next few days is quite a bit of volatility here in the markets. I do think that XCN is probably just going to be trending sideways for a little while. And at some point, after we clear these hurdles here regarding those tariffs and the Fed meetings, then we have a chance for XCN to break out to the upside from this triangle with that price target there sitting at above the 5 cent region. So exciting prospects here for XCN in the shorter term. Now, on top of that as well, just to briefly show you this, what we're seeing right now here on XCN in July is similar to what we saw back in January and April. So if you guys remember this downtrend here, after this downtrend, we saw this massive 4x pump here on XCN. And I do believe that something similar will happen in the near future. Now, the telltale signs here that we saw from the price and the MACD were these divergences. So on the 1-day chart, we saw a massive bullish divergence between the price, which over that period was heading down, and the MACD, which in the same period was clearly heading upwards. Now, if we have a look at what XCN has been doing over the past few weeks, we can see that the trend has clearly been down here on XCN. but over that same time frame, we can see that the MACD has actually been pointing upwards. Now, right after we saw this divergence, we saw this 4x pump to the upside. So the scheme right now that we're seeing here on XCN really reminds me of what we were seeing back at the start of April, just days before we saw this massive pump. Now, couple that with the fact that we are seeing the triangle as well that I showed you earlier. And I do think that it would be a mistake to be bearish at this point. So we're seeing quite a lot of evidence to point that we could be seeing a breakout sooner rather than later here on XCN, with those price targets in the shorter term set at 0.016 from that falling wedge and 0.056 as a result of that triangle that I showed you. Now, for the longer term here on XCN, we are just going to zoom out even more. And essentially, what we look for here on XCN are places where XCN might find some support and resistance. Now, as you can see, we use the fib levels for that very reason, because as you can see from XCN's history, we've come to test these fib levels as places of support and resistance on multiple different occasions. So we know that XCN really respects these fib levels. So when XCN gets to new highs here, so past that 0.05 region, the next three targets that we have here for XCN for 2025 is this 1.272 fib that lies at 0.11. We've got this 1.414 fib, which is one of my main targets. That's the previous all-time high as well, and that sits at 0.17. And if we can break past our previous all-time high, make a new all-time high here on XCN, I think it's going to head to 0.32, and that sits on the most important fib level there, the 1.618 extension. So these two levels here are my main targets for 2025, 0.17 and 0.32. And now for XCN to get to these price targets, what we need to see really is two main things. Now, to see that, we're going to go on the CoinMarketCap homepage, and you're just going to have a look at these two indicators here. And essentially, this fiat ingredient index here is a sentiment indicator. And what we want to see really is this value at above 80. The higher, the better. And basically, this just measures the sentiment in the market. And basically, the higher this value, the more positive emotion there is, the more greed there is, the more euphoria there is. And when we get those conditions where there's a lot of euphoria, where there's a lot of greed, and we also get an altcoin season. So when this value hits above 75, along with the fiat ingredient index at above 80, we get a perfect storm where we get these frenzies where small cap cryptos like XCN, like ZBEC, like other ones we cover in this channel have the best possible chances of reaching their upper price targets. Now, if you guys remember back in 2021, those frenzies in other categories such as gaming, such as NFTs, did these massive multiples because we saw extreme greed in the markets, and we also saw this altcoin season, which just means that altcoins and other small cap cryptos are outperforming Bitcoin as a whole. Now, that's exactly what we need to see in order for XCN to rally up to these upper price targets. So if you are a longer term holder, this is probably what I would go by if you're looking to sell your holdings. If the value here is unreasonably high, if we're seeing euphoria in the markets, if you go on Twitter and everyone is extremely bullish all across your Twitter homepage, and the altcoin season index here is closing in on 100, which just means that altcoins are getting overheated, that could be a good time to exit some of your position. But the good news is for longer term holders is that we are nowhere near that point yet. And I do believe that we will be at some point in 2025 or possibly even 2026. So those are the two things I'm looking for in the longer term here for XCN. Of course, in the shorter term, I'm watching that triangle with that price target, like I say, of 0.056 and that falling wedge as well. So, of course, guys, that was basically what I wanted to say in a nutshell here for XCN. Don't forget as well, if you are holding XCN but you're not yet staking, be sure to check out this video on how to stake your XCN. Of course, guys, thank you so much for supporting this channel and watching these videos. I do appreciate you all. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.